our bases here. All right, so we're going to start tonight's meditation class, and you'll notice that I'm not wearing a face mask because you won't be able to hear me or see me or all that stuff. This is me normally. I 100% support and believe that wearing a face mask in public is necessary, and right now it doesn't make any sense. So everyone in class is far enough away that I can't possibly get them. The talk that I want to attempt tonight is about the question of the week. What's the exact wording of the question? Do you find yourself being influenced by your world, or do you find yourself influencing it, or it's the other way around? But that's the gist of it. And the metaphor, the analogy, you don't have to go see, man. You can just sit. So the analogy that I've been using for this is very dramatic and is not perfect, but I'm using it and I think it's interesting enough to name the talk after it. So if you are influenced by your world, and let's say that you were to go completely to the furthest end of that, like spectrum, then you're like a pinball. And the pinball is just an inanimate object. It just lives its life being bounced around. It's got the spring. This is like when you're born. It's like the spring shoots you out, and then you get rattled around in the top part, and then you go down to the bottom, and the flippers kind of flip you up, and you're just bouncing about. And sometimes life feels like this. Sometimes life feels like you are just an inanimate object that's being pushed around, batted around, bounced off of walls, and like there's not a lot that you can do about it. And we don't want to be like that, for sure. The other half of the analogy is the wrecking ball. And so if you were to go to the other end of the extreme of this, you could say you're like a wrecking ball, and you're influencing everything to the point where you're not usually physically wrecking things, but to the point where it's like you are the only force at play, and nobody else's opinion matters. And you're not paying attention to anything and making your decisions. It's just like, this is what we're doing, this is happening, that's it. And some of you guys have experience with people like that. Some of you have had conversations with people like that, or you've had a conversation at least where somebody is being that way. And you don't normally notice it when you are the wrecking ball, but you definitely notice when somebody else is the wrecking ball, and you're like, I'm just trying to kind of get two words in here, and this other person just keeps rolling right over me. And this is not the way that we want to be either. So the talk, we've called this, are you a pinball or a wrecking ball? And the truth is, you cannot be completely one or completely the other. And so there, we answered the question, and that's it. We can all meditate now. The question is less about, are you a pinball all the time, or are you a wrecking ball all the time? Are you influenced by your world all the time, or are you influencing your world all the time? It's more like, what is your experience of life? And your experience of life might be one way one day and another way another day, but you kind of generally go through life feeling more like one or the other. And this is something to be aware of. And this is what all of the questions of the week are about. It's like, ask yourself this and be aware of it. Do you feel more like you are at the mercy of the forces of the world and the universe? Are you just kind of being bounced off of the walls of life, and whatever happens is happening to you? You have no real agency of your own. Or is your experience like I'm in charge all the time, and I'm always the one that's got to make decisions, and I'm always the one that is kind of, pushing things and all of that. And what I've been talking about this week in class is that even your experience, obviously you can't truly be all one or the other, but your experience shouldn't be really too heavily weighted towards one end or the other. Our experience, we want to be more in the middle. And this is something that our practice teaches us, and this is something that our meditation teaches us. So, for example, with practice, you want to be a great partner. A great partner is not somebody who goes around just beating everybody else up. A great partner is not somebody who is just trying to tell their junior student everything that they know about a technique. Because while that might be, kind of useful for some people in the beginning, it's going to get old pretty quickly, and you're going to end up just like, okay, I get that you know everything, but can you kind of pay a little bit of attention to what I'm going through right now, and like what my experience of this technique or this drill is right now. Because we ultimately, as a senior student, want to really put ourselves in the shoes of our partner and recognize what they're going through, because therefore we can get them what they need. If you are sparring and you're acting like a wrecking ball, you're just attack. And your partner wings something out there and you defend and then attack. And you're not thinking about or caring about what your partner's dealing with. You're not really trying to help them get better. You're just trying to win. If you are constantly trying to win at life, you're like a wrecking ball. You are just going through and knocking everybody and everything out of the way, and that's it. If you are the other way in sparring, you are, just defending and probably just getting hit, and it does not feel very good. And this was like the story that some of you guys have heard when I was I think a yellow sash. I had been practicing Tai Chi as well for about a year, and I was doing push hands with one of the senior students, Mr. Newcomb. Mr. Newcomb was really good in a lot of ways, and he was, a substantial man, so it was very difficult to push him and very easy to get pushed by him. And also, I just sucked at push hands, and he, halfway through, he just stopped and asked me, "Did you get made fun of a lot as a kid?" And I thought about it for a second because I knew the answer, and I said, "Yes, how did you know?" And he said, "Because I just keep pushing you, and you just keep taking it, and you never actually try to push me back." And that is its own way of not being a great partner either, right? You have to push back to give your partner that experience. You have to give your partner some energy to play with. And this is really what I'm getting to as the experience, or the way that we want to be, the ideal way of experiencing life and practice and meditation and all of it, is to be in a state of play. And I'll kind of get more to that later on. But as soon as I realized that in that moment of push hands, I was like, "You're right. I gotta try to push you." And so then I kind of switched all the way over to the other end, and I was trying to be wrecking ball, and I just was a very ineffective wrecking ball, and I just bounced off of him, and I was just a pinball still. In being a great partner, what we really want to do is to be aware of what our partner is giving us. And again, get out of our own heads and kind of be there in the real world with our partner. And the way that we do that is just focus on what's actually happening out here in real life in front of us. when we are focusing on this, like I can just put my attention over there with my partner, and in that act of placing my attention or my consciousness with my partner, I no longer am so caught up with, attached to, obsessed with what happens to me. Now I'm over there with my partner. And so if I get hit, I don't take it personally. If I hit my partner, I'm aware of what they're going through. But it is a back and forth conversation, like push hands should be, where it's more even. And sometimes that means you're great at sparring, or you're great at grappling, you're great at push hands. What you need to do is kind of find ways to challenge yourself, or kind of go a little bit easier on your partner, so you're not just destroying them all the time. When we find this kind of middle ground, it feels like play, in that it is effortless, not play in the way that you might think like I'm playing a game, like a sport, and I'm trying to win, I'm trying to beat the other person or the other team. I'm playing like a child plays with a toy. And this is the way that it was explained to my teacher, Sifu Brown, when he went to China, and they were translating for him, where he was in a Tai Chi class, and they said, okay, we're going to play push hands. And he said to the translator, play push hands. And in his mind, he was thinking play like I'm going to play against you to try to beat you. And he said, no. The translator said, play like a child plays with a toy. You watch a child play, there's no trying to win. A small child, a young child, is just so taken over by this thing, so mesmerized by it. They have this beginner's mind. It is so exciting that it is just pure joy. And this is like when you're sparring with somebody, if they land that high roundhouse kick, you enjoy it. You go, that was awesome, and it's fun, as long as you're not hurt. So you and your partner taking care of each other, and it's fun. Whether you're hitting or getting hit, it's play. It's effortless. It's great. This is the perfect balance between me having influence over, and then also me being influenced by my world. And we cannot take it too far in one direction or the other, because then we've lost it. So flow, this flow state or mushin, it seems on the outside to be like surrender, complete surrender, where there's nothing coming from me, where I'm not here and it is just like I'm kind of being bounced around. But if that were true, then you just kind of sit there in sparring, and they'd punch you, and you'd be like, what happened? I was in Mushin. How come I suck? How come I lost? So there is some agency involved there. There is some kind of presence from you, and the way that works is in the way that you've prepared yourself. So sometimes the way that we arrive at this perfect balance is in the way that we rep techniques, or the way that we prepare our minds with training, just like in meditation, to be able to be in this state. And in Mushin, when we put ourselves in the sparring situation, for example, since we've trained our bodies to do what it needs to do, then if we let our ego go and we are just in the moment, we are neither just completely a pinball or completely a wrecking ball. We feel the energy and we play with it. Meditation should be the same. So meditation is, first of all, your experience of it is very much, in the beginning especially, like I'm just a pinball, and like my thoughts are a pinball rattling around in my head, and I've got no control over what's happening right now in this meditation. It's just like I keep having thoughts and I'm terrible at it, and I keep going back to that type of thought of like, I'm so bad at this, why can't I meditate? So then we kind of overcompensate, and then we're like, no, I've got to sit here and breathe and do nothing else. And so then we kind of tense up, like physically and mentally. We tense and we try to hold on to, and then, you know, we have that experience again of like, well, how come I'm, you know, that is kind of that, what I'm describing now is more like that second thought that you have, which is you notice the thought and then you get attached to, I'm supposed to just be thinking about the breath. I'm supposed to just be meditating. Why is this happening? So that's not what we want either. What we want is we prepare ourselves by going back to the breath and focusing on that as much as we can, as often as we can. And then when we notice that we've kind of, you know, turned into a pinball, we've gotten knocked off course from where we want to be, then we gently kind of nudge ourselves back by focusing on the breath. And then there we are. And in meditation, this should be incredibly subtle. If we feel like we are really doing a lot in meditation, that's not quite it. Meditation should feel like we're going over here and we're just nudging ourselves back to where we want to be. And go over here and we just nudge ourselves back. It's a very gentle, subtle feeling. And some people say that we only actually meditate one time, and that one time is like where we hit enlightenment, where we are perfected human beings, and that's it, we did it. You can think of it that way, and in that way, every meditation leading up to that is like our preparation. So if it doesn't happen, or it's not happening now, we want to recognize that, like, okay, on some level, this is just me preparing for meditation. This is me preparing for that moment, or that kind of stage of my practice or my life where I am able to just be totally in the moment. And if it's not happening now, that's fine. I nudge myself in the right direction, and I'll stay there as long as I can. I think that a lot of times, and I've done this myself for most of my practice and most of my life, I've thought of enlightenment as like just a moment, that thing that happens, you know, it's like the fireworks go off and that's it. Wow. And until that happens, it is like I'm not enlightened, I've got nothing, and then it happens, and then boom, whoops, I almost knocked, boom, I boomed my camera right off, boom, I am enlightened. And that, I think, is, let me just make sure the mic is still plugged in here. That is one way of looking at it. But I'm going to suggest that it's more helpful to think of enlightenment in our meditation as like a journey where you are where you are right now. And every time you meditate, every moment that you're meditating, every breath that you are able to go back to is a step in that direction. And you are kind of edging in that way, but along the way, we'll hit these points. It's like I'm on the path and I get to this place where I thought I was going. In meditation, this is like I get to a very peaceful place. We call that peace. And then you get to a place of bliss, where it's, you know, another deeper kind of almost overwhelming feeling. And you get to these points along the way and you think like, oh, this is it, I did it. But as soon as you think of that, think of it in that way, it's like you are unable to go further and deeper. So instead of thinking of it as like I'm getting to a specific place, we think of it like a journey without an end, or like a mountain without a top. We're continually climbing. And meditation, enlightenment, is therefore, rather than a place that we're going to, it is the very kind of act of meditation, or it is, every step along the way. And I have really enjoyed in the last few years thinking of myself as a already enlightened being. And so this is like the idea of a soul, or like the divine kind of spark, or the Buddha nature. Many people would say that you are already perfect, and exactly what you are thinking that you're trying to become, you're it now. It's just a matter of being able to recognize it. And that's the tricky part. So when we're always looking outside of ourselves, then it's like we're never going to have the experience of getting there, because there is no there to get to. So how does this relate to what I'm talking about? I don't even remember how I got on this path, but now I got to try to bring it back. Let's see what we can do. I should just end the talk right now, but I'm not going to. This is what play feels like. So on your path towards enlightenment, on your journey that is, you already as an enlightened soul, what we're trying to do is have that experience be like play. If you are feeling like I'm here and I want to be over there, that's not play, that's just me thinking about something else. And the other thing about that is you can't be in the moment and be trying to get anywhere else other than where you are. And being in the moment is play. Being totally here now, present, and feeling totally perfect with exactly where you are as an enlightened soul is play. So when we kind of feel ourselves thinking like, I want to be somewhere else, recognize that's you trying to be a wrecking ball. And just come back to being exactly where you are. Our meditation practice should allow us to do that naturally. I was answering a question from a student in the previous class who was asking about like, well, how do I understand that I want to take this state of mind, this consciousness that we get to in meditation, and take that into the rest of life. And I want to have that kind of consciousness in everything else that I do. How do I do that? And I said, on one hand, it should just happen naturally. The way that you do it is to meditate. When you meditate, you are reinforcing this kind of invitation for your mind to come back to the moment. And when we focus on the breath, it's an invitation back to the breath. When we focus on something else, it's the invitation to come back to that. But it's also an invitation to general focus, the ability to really spend time doing one thing without being pulled away by other stuff. So the other half of the answer that I gave to him, that first part is kind of like more towards the pinball part. I'm just going to meditate and let it happen naturally. The second part is more like I have more agency, more like wrecking ball style, where I am deciding specifically and purposefully to just do this thing in the same way that I set aside time to meditate and nothing else happens, and when it does, I let it go and I come right back to meditation. We're trying to do that same, have the same attitude of setting aside time to be totally focused on whatever that thing is. So you need to work on something, you've got a project due, you say, okay, this is it, I'm going to treat this like meditation. I'm setting the timer, I'm shutting the door, I'm turning off my phone, and this is all I'm doing for now. And that way, we are really inviting our minds to be totally focused and present on this thing that we're doing. And if you haven't tried that with meditation, by the way, you should try it. If you only ever meditate like amidst a bunch of noise, and anytime something comes up in your mind, you think, oh yeah, I better go do that thing, you're not going to get very far with your meditation. So we want to be able to do that with anything. And it's not always easy and it's not always possible. But can you imagine how it would feel for you if you had something that you were really dealing with and you really wanted to have a conversation with somebody and they said, okay, I'm setting aside 10 minutes right now, I'm turning off my phone, and there's nothing else that I'm going to do right now. And you just had them there for that amount of time. For many of us, that has never happened in our entire lives. And it would be so incredible to have that opportunity. The same opportunity is there for us as the person who is setting aside the time to be there. It should be the same for both of us. So to really actively pursue something in the way that we pursue that meditation, in the way that it is both kind of passive and active, where we have agency because we've decided to set aside the time. You've decided that you're going to do this thing and you've trained yourself for it. But then also it is passive because we are playing in that moment. We're allowing what happens to happen. In a conversation, I hear what this person is saying, and then I'm playing with that energy just the same way that we do in push hands. So in any activity, at any time in life, we have the option to do that, to be like the synthesis between pinball and wrecking ball, to have agency by training and setting up, and then to allow what happens to happen. So you're like a tiny wrecking ball. You're swinging yourself, but you kind of also bounce off of stuff too. The physicality of what we do in class oftentimes mimics this. I'll give you a great example. I'm going to have to take off my mic for this. I did this in Tai Chi the other day, but this is like a drum technique from Karate Kid 2, where I should turn off the sound on this. Oops. So this will stay up there. So we go like this. And you may or may not see this, but this is a perfect synergy of the two kind of mindsets, because I'm controlling my center and I turn it, and then my arms just go. So my arms are flowing and just doing what they do, but my center is moving. If I try to have too much control, then it looks like this. It's more robotic, right? And if I have no agency and I'm not starting anything at all, then I'm just sitting here, or I'm just laying on the ground asleep, right? So this is the way that our practice looks physically. It's actually kind of that perfect middle ground of like I'm training myself, and then I get into Mushin so that then I can act and be with it. And the physical way that I'm moving is not overly tense, but not overly relaxed. I'm ready and waiting, but present and able to kind of, like water, just be able to take the shape of whatever presents itself in that moment. So I've gone a while, and we're going to have to meditate at some point, so let's do it now. In your meditation tonight, try to recognize if you are going kind of too hard and being attached and being tense and rigid with where your mind is, to the point where you're actually creating more thought or more anxiety in that way, or recognize when your mind is just kind of rattling around and you have no ability to control your thoughts by being in the present with your breath. And wherever you notice yourself in either direction, just gently nudge yourself back to the breath, play with that breath, and you allow it to come in and you allow it to go out. And in that moment when you play with the breath, it's perfect. Your meditation is perfect and you are perfect. Sit comfortably.